The Tower of London, a symbol of England's enduring monarchy, is shrouded in tales of ambition, betrayal, and unimaginable cruelty. Over its nearly 1,000-year history, this iconic fortress has served many roles: a royal residence, a prison, a treasury, and perhaps most infamously, a place of torture and execution. Beneath its cold stone walls, some of the most brutal methods of punishment were carried out, designed not only to inflict pain, but to serve as public spectacles, reminders of the crown's absolute power. Here we delve into the tower's most harrowing execution methods, exploring the history, the victims, and the grim legacy they left behind. One of the most infamous instruments of torture housed within the tower was the rack, a device forever synonymous with medieval cruelty. Constructed from wood and iron, it was designed with one purpose: to stretch the human body to its breaking point, literally. Victims were tied tightly by their wrists and ankles, then slowly, agonizingly pulled apart as the rollers turned, dislocating joints and tearing ligaments. The pain was so excruciating that screams from the dungeon often echoed through the tower grounds, a grim reminder of the crown's unyielding authority. Among its most infamous victims was Guy Fawkes, the conspirator behind the 1605 gunpowder plot. After his capture in the cellars beneath Parliament, Fawkes was transported to the Tower under the direct order of King James I, who personally authorized his torture. For days, Fawkes endured the rack, his body pulled to the brink of destruction. As the rollers tightened, his resolve slowly crumbled, the excruciating pain leaving him no choice. His eventual confession, written in a shattered, shaky hand, remains preserved to this day, a chilling testament to the horrors he endured. But the rack wasn't reserved solely for high-profile figures like Fawkes. Countless lesser-known prisoners, accused of treason, espionage, or heresy, suffered the same fate. The device's brutality made it an effective, if utterly inhumane, tool for extracting information. Truth or lies didn't matter. Confessions were wrung from tortured bodies regardless. For those who survived, the aftermath was no less cruel. Many emerged permanently maimed, their twisted limbs serving as living reminders of the crown's merciless justice. In stark contrast to the rack, which stretched its victims to unbearable limits, the Scavengers Daughter employed a sinister inversion of torture. This gruesome device, attributed to Sir Leonard Skeffington, lieutenant of the Tower under King Henry VIII, compressed its victims into a tight, agonizing position. Prisoners were forced into a hunched, fetal posture, their knees pressed tightly against their chests, and their bodies bound within a rigid iron frame. As the frame tightened, immense pressure was applied to the chest and abdomen, leading to excruciating pain, internal bleeding, and often unconsciousness. The victims could do nothing but endure. Their ability to scream or even breathe gradually stripped away. Unlike the audible agony caused by the rack, the Scavenger's Daughter created a harrowing scene of silent suffering. Blood would seep from the nose, ears, and even the eyes of the victim, forming a macabre spectacle that demonstrated the crown's merciless grip. The method's cruel genius lay in its psychological impact. Those who witnessed the aftermath were haunted by the grotesque tableau of human fragility under such relentless compression. Though deployed less frequently than other tools of torture, the Scavenger's Daughter was no less effective in breaking both body and spirit. It became a chilling symbol of the tower's dark ingenuity, where silence spoke volumes about the torment endured within its shadowy walls. The manacles, deceptively simple iron cuffs, were among the tower's most insidious tools of torture. Victims were suspended by their wrists, with their entire body weight dragging downwards. This caused excruciating pain as shoulders dislocated, muscles tore, and nerves were severely damaged. Though less outwardly gruesome than methods like the rack, the long-term effects were devastating. Survivors were often left permanently crippled, enduring chronic pain and limited mobility for the rest of their lives, a constant reminder of their torment. One of the most notable victims of the manacles was John Gerard, a Jesuit priest during Elizabeth III's reign. Gerard's refusal to betray his fellow Catholics marked him as a target of relentless interrogation. Suspended for hours, his shoulders tore from their sockets, leaving him in unimaginable agony. Despite this, Gerard displayed extraordinary resilience, sustained by his unwavering faith. His vivid memoirs recount the ordeal in harrowing detail, offering a rare first-hand account of such suffering. What makes Gerard's story even more remarkable is what followed. In an audacious escape, Gerard managed to scale the tower's walls using a rope thrown by sympathizers. Weak and injured, he defied the odds, evading capture and continuing his mission. His story is a testament to human resilience and defiance in the face of unbearable cruelty, securing his place in history as a symbol of unyielding courage. Reserved for the most heinous crimes, such as poisoning, boiling alive, was a rare but particularly horrific form of execution, chosen not just for its brutality, but for the terrifying spectacle it created. The condemned were often stripped and shackled, then slowly lowered into a cauldron of boiling water, oil, or molten metal. Their anguished screams pierced the air, echoing through the tower grounds as their skin blistered and flesh melted. Each agonizing moment was designed to instill fear and serve as a stark warning to onlookers. One of the most infamous cases was that of Richard Roos, a cook accused of poisoning the Bishop of Rochester's soup in 1531. Though some accounts suggest the poisoning may have been accidental, Rose was swiftly condemned. Under direct orders from Henry VIII, he was subjected to boiling alive in a public execution outside Smithfield Market. Chroniclers vividly recorded how the bubbling cauldron became a macabre spectacle, with crowds gathering to witness his punishment. The scene was so grotesque that even contemporaries, hardened to the brutality of the age, expressed shock and horror. This rare method was meant to deter similar crimes, but its sheer savagery led to debates about its moral implications. Ultimately, the practice was abandoned, remembered only as one of the darkest chapters in England's history of public executions. While many methods of execution at the Tower were designed for maximum pain and humiliation, beheading was considered an honorable death, often reserved for members of the nobility. This distinction was rooted in the belief that the elite deserved a more dignified end, sparing them the public agony endured by common criminals. The condemned were granted the mercy of a swift death, though the reality was often far from painless. A poorly aimed or inexperienced executioner could turn the promise of a quick death into a gruesome ordeal, with multiple strikes required to sever the head. One of the most famous beheadings at the Tower was that of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII. Accused of adultery, incest, and treason, charges widely believed to be fabricated to enable Henry's remarriage, Anne was executed in 1536 on Tower Green. In a rare gesture of supposed kindness, Henry arranged for a skilled French executioner to ensure a clean strike. Anne met her fate with remarkable composure, delivering final words that praised the king and entrusted her soul to God. Her death, though swift, served as a chilling spectacle, meant to remind subjects of the dire consequences of crossing the crown. Other notable victims included Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, and Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife. Both young women were thrust into political machinations beyond their control, with their deaths symbolizing the ruthless nature of Tudor politics. Lady Jane's execution, marked by her youth and tragic innocence, was a somber affair that stirred deep public sympathy. Catherine's, in contrast, was tinged with scandal and served as a stark reminder of the precariousness of life at court. These beheadings were as much political theater as they were punishments. carefully choreographed events meant to reinforce the monarch's divine authority while silencing dissent. For those convicted of heresy, burning at the stake was the ultimate punishment, both a physical torment and a public declaration of the crown's authority over matters of faith. Victims were bound tightly to wooden posts, surrounded by bundles of kindling and faggots. As the flames engulfed them, their agonized cries echoed through the air, searing the memory of their suffering into the minds of onlookers. This horrifying spectacle was designed to terrify dissenters and reinforce the state's religious doctrine. Under the reign of Mary I, infamously dubbed Bloody Mary, England witnessed an era of fierce religious persecution. Determined to restore Catholicism after her father, Henry VIII, severed ties with Rome, Mary ordered the execution of scores of Protestant reformers. Among the first was John Rogers, a clergyman and translator of the Bible into English. Rogers' burning at Smithfield in 1555 marked the beginning of a brutal campaign that claimed the lives of nearly 300 individuals. Though not carried out within the tower itself, many victims spent their final days imprisoned in its foreboding walls. From the cells of the tower, they were led to Smithfield or other public spaces, where their executions unfolded before crowds. The flames of these martyrs became enduring symbols of religious intolerance, galvanizing future generations of reformers who sought freedom of worship. Smithfield's fires left a legacy that extended beyond the immediate horror. The courage of those who faced death for their beliefs became an inspiration, their sacrifices remembered as a cornerstone of the eventual push for religious tolerance in England. Today, their stories serve as reminders of the devastating cost of fanaticism and the resilience of those who stood firm in their faith. Perhaps the most gruesome punishment of all was being hanged, drawn, and quartered, a sentence reserved for those accused of the gravest offense, treason. This method was not only a physical ordeal, but a calculated spectacle of terror, designed to reinforce the absolute authority of the crown. The execution was a prolonged and torturous affair. The condemned were first hanged by the neck until near death, their gasping breaths and spasms marking the beginning of their torment. Then, they were cut down, still alive, to face the next phase of their punishment, disembowelment and emasculation. Their entrails were ripped from their bodies and burned before their very eyes, a visceral display of the monarch's vengeance. Finally, the executioner beheaded the victim and quartered the corpse, with each gruesome piece sent to different parts of the kingdom, a grim warning to others. The case of William Wallace in 1305 epitomizes the cruelty of this punishment. The Scottish freedom fighter's body was mutilated and scattered across England, his head displayed on London Bridge. This macabre ritual served as both punishment and propaganda, reminding subjects of the price of rebellion. Even centuries later, under the Tudor and Stuart reigns, this punishment remained a favored method of crushing dissent. The execution of Thomas More, a revered statesman, underscored the monarchy's readiness to employ such barbarity against even the most respected figures. More's steadfast refusal to accept Henry VIII's supremacy over the church led to his brutal end, further cementing the hanged, drawn, and quartered execution as a tool of political dominance. These horrifying deaths ensured that treason was not just a crime, it was a spectacle of submission to royal authority. The methods of execution and torture used at the Tower of London were not merely acts of cruelty, they were carefully crafted performances designed to instill fear and obedience. These punishments reflected the shifting dynamics of power, religion, and politics in England, from the Wars of the Roses to the Reformation and beyond. Yet, amidst the horror, the stories of resilience and defiance shine through. Figures like Anne Boleyn, Guy Fawkes, and John Gerard remind us of the human capacity to endure, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. Their fates, though tragic, became symbols of resistance and courage. Today, the tower stands as a monument to England's turbulent past, its grim history preserved in the whispers of its walls and the haunting memories of those who perished within. As visitors walk through its storied halls, they are reminded of the high price of power and the enduring struggle for justice and freedom. The Tower of London is no longer a place of execution, but its legacy, as a silent witness to humanity's darkest moments, ensures that its stories will never be forgotten.